had a conversation driving up in the truck this morning that I found very fascinating. I think our listeners will find fascinating, talking about two categories. We'll talk about the reality of online censorship and agenda-driven big tech, and then the rise of, right now, at least of this recording, artificial intelligence. And kind of it's been baking for a while, but it's really popped the surface of culture in the last few weeks, few months, and the impact of that on culture and society. And then maybe we could wrap it up with just a free word to you guys on men, masculinity, all things manhood. Give you the last word. Go that direction. Sound good?
Okay.
So, John, you make a living online. That's what you do for a business. And Pastor Mark, you've been online for, one of the first early adopters with technology for sermons and websites and recording sermons and taking it from the tape ministry online. You've been online for 25, 30 years. What are you guys seeing right now that's different than it was 10 years ago? In the conspiracy theories that we hear about, I've heard your stories. You're living the reality of them. What are you seeing? So our listeners go like, what's going on out there? What are you fighting against? What are you working with?
I would love a level playing field such that when I created content for our online audience, that online audience would actually see what we're putting out. So it's like, they're subscribed and they've turned notifications to all. And then people regularly report, I haven't got a notification from you in 2 years. It's that kind of thing. My wife, who subscribes, watches all our stuff, because she's supportive like that. So rock on. She doesn't ever get notifications. I don't pop up in her feed. And over and over and over, folks that follow us have been unsubscribed. They can't find us on, social media or YouTube. And so, across all the different places, it is very, very obvious that my viewpoints are not valued and are purposefully buried such that folks can't find it. And so that kind of sucks.
That affects your business. That's your livelihood. That's your income.
I think that's the point, is to put us out of business and bury everyone that doesn't wholesale accept mainstream values and narrative of a culture in decline.
Now, you talked about like the throttling strategy. So and unpack that. I thought it was pretty fascinating. It's like if they just cut you off, there'd be outcry, there'd be backlash, and so it's just a slow choke.
So it turns out that multi-trillion-dollar companies have strategy to them. So it doesn't just happen. Like, hey, we're worth $1 trillion. So the alphabet companies, the S&P 7, it used to be S&P 500. It's the S&P 7, and all the alphabet companies, the big tech guys, occupy those seats. But the idea is, they're ideologically driven. You thought of like, it's just profit driven. I'm like, they got enough profit. It's ideologically driven. And if you don't fit into those ideologies, you're not going to trend. It doesn't matter that there's certain conservative personalities. Like I'm thinking of one personality that does more engagements than all of CNN put together, and he'll never, ever trend. It's not because he's not popular. It's not because people don't like what they are putting out. It's just because he goes against the big tech narrative. And so he's not going to see that. They're not going to help him grow. They're actually going to work against him. And so what it looks like from my vantage point, being somebody who's been closely studying the analytics with teams who are good at interpreting this stuff, is it looks like, they don't want to make a martyr out of you. They don't want that. They don't want to enrage the public. So instead, what they do is they kind of throw a quarantine around you. And that means, you can continue to exist on these platforms, but we're going to slow down your growth, much like you'd have a restrictor plate on a vehicle of like, you cannot go past 70 miles an hour. And they kind of box you in like that. You're not going to grow anymore. And if you do, it's a trickle. If it's a trickle, that means you're going to keep feeding it and putting in content, which they're going to mark up
and monetize.
Right. And then they'll give you fractions of a penny on the dollar. And they decide to tell you how many views you got. They decide how much they're going to pay you for it. And you have no way to know if like you could have 10 times more views than they're reporting. You have no idea how many real subscribers you have. So I don't know whether I have many times more subscribers than is actually reported. You're completely blind and there's no real accountability. They just, this is what we're going to pay you. There's no discussion. They don't show me their work. It's just, that's it. And so I think that they kind of quarantine you, and then over time, they squeeze you as they unsubscribe people, and they allow you to fall out of the memory of the public. And so it's isolate, quarantine, and then slowly choke you to death until you're out of business.
Mark, what's your experience been like?
Well, part of the difficulty is they change the algorithm constantly. And so as soon as you figure out, okay, this content will work and this will get us throttled or thrown in some sort of purgatory, then they change it. And so unless you're really well-funded and understand the algorithms, you're always on the defense.
Yeah.
And that makes it more complicated for sure. But different platforms will censor different content. And so like we found over on TikTok, anything that's relationship or family does really well. You go anywhere near transgenderism, boom, you're over into TikTok jail immediately. If you're on Facebook or Instagram, you go anywhere near Black Lives Matter or anything political, boom, you're in jail. And we had some years ago, we were talking about in the Jeep today, I read just the mission statement for Black Lives Matter early on, and boom, rolled millions of views in the clip. And then like months, maybe years later, still the exact same view number. Nobody has seen it, or it just doesn't count. So then you log in to the platform and you go behind the scenes and you realize that the actual viewer count that they report is considerably different than what's facing publicly.
Wow.
And you're just like, well, that's interesting. So even in their own data, they're publicly throttling and diminishing.
Well, you lost it in your Google Docs.
Yeah, that was what was weird. And this is where I'm not a tinfoil hat guy, but like I said today, like I'm ready to go buy some tinfoil. So like on the Black Lives Matter original website mission statement, it's like, we're anti-father, anti-family. We want to literally nuke the nuclear family. That was in the original mission statement.
Yeah.
And so screenshotted it, had it in Google Docs. And like today, if you go to look for the original screenshot of the Black Lives Matter mission statement, it's gone. Yeah. It's gone from the internet. And and furthermore, it's gone from your Google Docs if you had a copy.
Yeah.
And that's.
So I sent you an email with the screenshots of it. To this day, I can't find that email. It's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone from my Gmail. It's
Yep.
like, this is wild. So what does that mean about getting your message out? Like, what are you guys doing to try to combat that? Because your message is never going to be non-controversial. Preaching the gospel, bringing God's plan to bear about gender and sexuality. What's the plan? What's the play?
Well, you got to use as many platforms as you can. And you win on some, you lose on others, and the game keeps shifting. I mean, John will tell you the goal is get your website. Hopefully it's, on a server system that isn't going to remove you.
It's not.
Which is hard.
Yeah, they own it all.
Yeah. It's kind of like you go into the casino and you're like, I think they're going to win. Their house is bigger than mine.
How to beat the house?
Oh, there's a 14-foot statue of Caesar in solid marble. I'm pretty sure the odds aren't in my favor.
The odds are not my favor.
Yeah.
And so,
it's etched gold.
Yeah. So the guy at
they seem to be doing well.
The guy at the slot machine that is just literally.
He lost when he walked in.
Yeah, he lost when he walked in because he's up against the house.
But you can't not be on social media because that's essentially the Mars Hill of our day, right? Was that what you would say? It's like, it's where the conversations are happening. It's where...
Yeah, it's where people come to debate. Well, and the point is, if you're trying to get a message to people, there are these communities that house all of these people, and they don't want your content, but your content is to try and convince them of, God and Jesus and Bible. And if they're literally antichrist, they don't want that. And so it is a form of spiritual warfare. I do believe there is a demonic element to it. And when Paul talks in Romans 1 that there comes a day where the truth is suppressed, evil reigns, gender and sexuality have no guardrails, and people are uncivil, you're like... Romans 1 is like the definition of Twitter, which is, social media is a septic tank, and Twitter is the bottom of the septic tank,
Right.
but it's suppression of truth is really what it is.
So we got to talk about AI, and you've always been an early adopter in technology. I'm like last guy to do it. I'd like to stay and monitor the rest of my life and drive diesel pickups and have nothing change. But you've always been in on the kind of front end of technology, kind of the Gutenberg guy, like, hey, what's next? Let's use it to get the gospel to go further, farther, faster. But and you're a tech guy too, but I think all of us are absolutely and utterly terrified of AI. Talk about how we were talking about like the weaponization of it today in the demonic realm.
Well, everything is a tool. And so, you can use it for good or for evil. It's a neutral tool. But so with artificial intelligence, I mean, it's like right now we're using it to go through. So like right now, the goal is to use artificial intelligence to go through, 25, 30, I think I've been teaching the Bible for 30 years, something like that, to go in and then transcribe everything I've ever done.
Wow.
And then you can put it into a search engine. So then if somebody comes to the website and they're like a verse or a name or a word or a concept, it can pull up everything I've ever done in my life.
Wow.
And link to that audio, video, or print content.
Wow.
That's an amazing tool that you would have to pay an infinite number of dollars to get done, and artificial intelligence can do it.
Yeah.
And so there are some really wonderful uses of it. On the same side, if what we're looking at is some form of intelligence, but it's not sentient, then if you add, robotics and all of that, what if it gets demonized? If you believe in the demonic, if I was a spirit, I'd be like, I will take that robotic body and that artificial intelligence, and if I could combine that into a weaponization, now I used to grow up watching The Terminator, and you're like, that may be what that looks like.
Yeah.
And the demonic for sure is going to use every opportunity to weaponize.
Mm-hmm. Talk about how much detail you want to go into. Mostly dudes audience, like worst case scenario of how it's creating worlds where men can commit horrible atrocities and not break the law.
Like right now, like rolling off the line that we were talking about today in China is like sex dolls that are children.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and sexual robotics, you'll have a whole generation of guys that never have a relationship with a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, they're raping robotic women and children and living in a virtual reality world with a complete addiction and an inability for human companionship. I mean, like right now, there are certain countries that are a little more technologically advanced, like in Japan, young men are not marrying. They are not having children. Even today, it's the highest record number of employable young men not in the labor force. It's a category, MILF, not in labor force. The majority of young men in their 20s are not in a dating or marital relationship and have no plan or intention of pursuing one. The average young guy in his 20s has got 8 hours of leisure time a day. Almost all of that is screen. It's video games and pornography. And if you know anything about neural pathways and brain science, you're literally re-hardwiring an entire generation. And the average guy, testosterone levels have gone down 1% every year in my lifetime. And so you're literally not only just culturally removing manhood, you are technologically and hormonally, biochemically, and with brain chemistry, eradicating masculinity as a category. And to me, if I'm a government that wants to take over everyone and everything, the best thing is to just get rid of the men, and then there's no one to stop you from total control. And then it's a dependency culture, and everyone's addicted and dependent. And there's not enough men in the workforce to sustain the tax base, and there's not enough men in the military to stop the invasion.
Yeah. Talk about last night, we were talking about the World War I and the effects of what happened to the men who were in battle, and then the women who were staying home, and what happened when they came back, and the impact of that on church attendance in America that we're still experiencing to this day, that you even spoke to as he explained it last night over dinner. You were like, that was my experience.
Yeah.
Unpack that for us and,
So, yeah, like-
open conversations. So jump in anytime.
Yeah.
Sure.
So roughly 60% of church attenders are female. And the least likely person to go to church is a single man in his 20s or 30s. That's when you're little, your mom takes you. When you're older, your wife drags you. In the middle, you hit the eject button.
You're on your own.
And the reason is most men don't feel comfortable in church. My thesis is women feel more comfortable in a masculine environment if it's not aggressive and unsafe. Then men feel very uncomfortable, conversely, in a female environment.
Yeah.
That's why a woman will go to a sports bar and a man won't go to a nail salon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the church feels more like a nail salon than a sports bar.
Yeah.
And it's because in World War I and II, if my memory's correct, 9% of the population was in the military. Most of it was deployed.
Yeah.
And so now you take the strong, young, male energy in the culture and you ship it overseas. What's left are, lesser men, lesser strong men.
Yeah. Men unfit for battle.
Older,
or
which now would be
sickly.
76% of 20-somethings.
Yeah.
Wow.
76% are not fit for the military.
And the military fitness standards just to enter are not that hard.
No, I think if you see your feet, you're in.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah, you can even be a worship pastor these days. Like
Yeah,
that.
we'll get into that.
Hey, I don't want to talk about that. That was a side
That
trail
was
earlier,
that was
just
that,
for us.
That was offline. So I'll just summarize. So then what happens is the guys go to battle. They get a commander. They get a brotherhood. They get a mission. It's a masculine environment, deep relationship. They come back. And while they were gone, women, children, older and lesser men took over the church because it wasn't built by strong men. It wasn't built for strong men. So you go to the church and you're like, the decor feels very feminine. The guy up front is an older guy who's like a grandpa who's loving women and children, but he's not like a battalion leader that young guys are going to follow. And then the music is in the octaves and the key and the style and the tone that the women and the children like. Yeah. And so the guy walks into church and he's like, I just got out of battle and my brothers aren't here. This doesn't feel like that environment. I don't have a strong leader. We don't have a mission. This is a place for women and children and older people, men and women. And so men just didn't go to church and they've never come back. And then if you do a masculine form of Christianity, well, today all masculinity is toxic.
Yeah.
And so if you do anything in the church that feels like maybe a heterosexual guy would give it a consideration, then you're attacked as, being uncouth.
Yeah. So what do you think is happening? You talked to me before about this generational apostasy. In the moment we're in as a culture, the moment we're in as far as human history, and it's both kind of shocking and grievous, but also, as we've talked about, very exhilarating. The church is getting pruned, the church is getting thinned. It's not as if there are churches on every corner that are vibrant. There are church buildings on every corner, but there seems to be less and less churches that are being led by vibrant, gospel-centered, Jesus-loving, kingdom-building, tender, gracious, kind, loving, aggressive men. What kind of moment are we in with this generational apostasy and the opportunity that brings to the church?
That's what you're talking about, John. Just even finding a church.
Yeah.
So,
I've struggled immensely for a couple years as my wife and I moved out into the country. And so we're church shopping and hopping around and just trying to, hopefully this will work. And we're kind of like, maybe kind of, sort of. And you want to get in there. And it's been very, very challenging to find a vibrant church body where people love Jesus. They're alive. They're brave to speak the truth and live the truth. We're not just logging time on Sunday because that's what you do on Sunday. It's like, no. You can look at these men and you walk with them and the Holy Spirit's in their bones.
Yeah.
And you're like, I want to be part of that. And I've been part of that before. And so I want it again. And it's just incredibly difficult to find. And so I'm encouraged that as awful as everything in culture is, and it is, it's terrible. And the more I look at my Twitter feed or the news, or you just look in the eyes of the people walking around through stores and whatnot, hollow people that are scared and purposeless. Mm-hmm. The gospel has all the answers, all of it. Jesus is the answer to all of our greatest heart problems. And so I think the stakes have been never higher. And now that the stakes are so high, anyone that's a true believer is going to see, you can't hide anymore. If it's kind of like, just to say the most basic Christian truths is going to make you immediately be castigated as an outrageous rebel.
Yeah.
And so now it's like you are with Jesus or not. No one can hide anymore. And I think as the wheat are separated from the chaff, it's just such a wonderful evangelism opportunity as people are broken and lost and want someone to just show a backbone and tell them the truth. It provides a wonderful place that we can reach out to those folks. So right now is the most prime evangelism time I can imagine.
Yep.
And so,
Mark, you're working with leaders all the time, pastoral leaders specifically, but also business leaders. You've had a heart for pastors, that have invested in pastors, built pastors, discipled pastors, launched pastors, hundreds if not thousands for the last 30 years. What are you seeing right now that's different than it was 20 years ago?
The cowards have taken over. The cowards now lead. The sons of Ahab have taken the reins.
Yeah.
And
what does that look like?
They will critique anyone who says or does anything, but they don't say or do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they pontificate. And I always say, there's soldiers, and then there's historians who talk about wars, and then there's warriors who fight them.
Mm-hmm.
There's hardly any warriors left.
Mm-hmm.
There's critics of war and students of war, and no one in the fight. And so, I love pastors, and there are some good ones and some guys I genuinely care about. But to me, there's the hard woke, and those guys are obvious.
Yeah.
They fly the rainbow flag or the Black Lives Matter flag because they've come out of Satan's closet. And then you've got the other guys that are the soft woke. They won't say or do a damn thing. They won't talk about abortion. They won't talk about gender. They won't talk about marriage and sexuality. They're not going to. The problem is not what they say; it's what they don't say. Mm-hmm. And you're in such a polarized cultural environment now that if you aren't hated, you're probably not faithful. And if you haven't been canceled, you've probably not done your job.
Mm-hmm.
And most guys don't want to be hated or canceled. Most pastors wake up and they're like, I want people to like me and I want to keep my job.
Yeah.
Pastors tend to be insecure and criticize each other. It's a weird deal when they're together. Oh, so-and-so, did you hear such and such? And like the church porn gossip thing,
Right.
And I was talking to this one pastor recently, and he's like, "Would you hear about so-and-so?" I was like, "Well, what?" And he's like, "Well, he's getting attacked." I was like, "Well, I said, pull up his social media feed, pull it up." And I said, "Now click on the people that are most aggressively commenting against him. How many do you see rainbow flags?" Yeah. He's like, "Man, there's a lot of rainbow flags." I was like,
"Good dude."
He may be on the right side of the fight.
Yeah.
If you're at this day, if you say anything or believe anything or do anything, you're going to get criticized. And the question is, well, which side of the fight are you on?
Yeah. Not if you're going to get criticized, but by who?
Yeah. Controversial. Oh, he's controversial. Oh, then he's the best or the worst dude.
Yeah, if I see
one of the two.
If I see a church with 1 and 5 star reviews, that's probably the one I'm picking.
Yeah.
If it's all 2.5, my God.
Well, it's 1 and 5 because he's being clear.
Yeah.
So we're both in ministry full time. You have been in ministry in the past, planted a church, but now full time in a Warrior Poet Society. Mm-hmm. What are you looking for in a leader in a church? I know you spoke to it, but like specifically with the precision that God's wired you with, what are you looking for in a pastor, preacher, church leader, and church? And I'm asking you because there are going to be a lot of men watching this who are leaders in the church, and I want them to hear what men like you are looking for, to hopefully encourage them to be better men and to encourage the ones who are currently men like that, but also for the men listening. We talked about last night, there's a lot of guys moving to our church, like because Grace City exists.
People are moving to find a church. They've made
community.
It a priority. It used to be, well, there's a lot of good churches everywhere. So just, get a job and get a school and get yourself.
Find a school, find a church.
Yeah. And now
there.
It's like, it's hard to find a church.
Yep.
A good one for your family where you're going to have friends and your kids are going to grow up and hopefully fall in love and marry someone. We're talking about that. And so, yeah, what we're seeing is a lot of people are moving, and they're moving to be part of a church, which to me makes sense because, like, if your church is not a priority, I've got to wonder if your faith is.
Yep. Absolutely. So what are you looking for in a church leader and a church?
Very easy. First one is I want someone who boldly declares repentance of sin and following of Jesus Christ. Number one of like, I can kind of look the other way on all kinds of foibles and of like, all right, there's not very good speaker, or he looks kind of goofy like Josh. I can ignore all kinds of stuff like that, you know?
Nobody has as good a hair as you do, so it's not fair to make fun of the rest of us.
I can't turn it off, man. Yeah. It's my spiritual gift is my hair, you know? And so fantastic. Well, thank you for recognizing that is true. Anyway, preaches the gospel of repentance. Ephesians 6 is like, pray for us so that we can declare the gospel boldly as it ought to be preached. Of like, no. It's not just you saying it's a bold preaching of the gospel. It's
unapologetic, clear.
And so I want that. I want someone to make much of Jesus and to really be faithfully teaching Bible.
Yeah.
I really like expositional, and that's kind of how I go of like, hey, God kind of talked about all the stuff he wanted, and in the proportion that it's in the Bible is probably a nice general guide of how much you should be talking about it as well.
Yeah.
So you can't sidestep the hard issues and, you want to take a series out and do blah, blah, blah. I'm pretty good with that. But generally speaking, you trust the Bible more than your ability to handpick cherry topics that are going to be a little bit more in the let's get the big crowds and not tick anyone off.
Yeah.
So I think that's good. Here's something of, I need to follow a masculine leader. I need to follow kind of a meat eater, a dude. Yeah. So, I mean, that's really the...
When you mentioned too, and wife and kids, like ministry needs to start at home. And if you meet his wife and she's going, she doesn't appreciate him, or she's not flourishing, she's not joyful. And if the kids really just don't like their dad, that's a problem. Deal. Yeah. I mean, because ministry starts home. Jesus says, love your neighbor. It's like, well, the people with your last name are your nearest neighbor. You got to start there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, just to say this here, and we've talked about it before, but Grace is a woman who's flourishing. She adores her husband. Mark loves his wife very much. His kids adore him. He adores his kids. He's got 2 grandkids coming August and
can't wait.
In September, October, whatever.
July and September. I call his wife Saint Sharon.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, she's great. And I love your kids. And so, I mean, that's, again, like, if he has courage, so what you're looking for is like, stays in his gender lane, has courage, opens the Bible, talks about Jesus, and his wife and kids are blessed because he's in their life. That doesn't seem unreasonable.
No, it doesn't. I'd add another thing, because right now it's a little too head pastor centric. And I would want to say, like, all right, can cultivate a team of Jesus loving. He can cultivate a team. It's not just because you could make that person, and he's not really good at bringing everyone else on board.
Elevating other gifts.
So I guess
other leaders.
You could sum it all up with that's a church that's alive. You can feel it when you walk in. Even if you didn't meet the head pastor, you feel
culture.
This church is alive. It's got a culture where...
a culture of expectation.
Absolutely.
You can tell when people show up and they're expecting people are going to get saved, marriages are going to get healed, people are going to fall in love, babies are going to get born. Like, there's a sense of it's like
excitement.
It's like, oh, there was a resurrection and we expect things to happen. And in a lot of places you walk in, like, there's no sense of expectation. It's hard to commit to a place that doesn't have a sense of expectancy.
Yeah. It's immediately obvious what places have those senses of expectancy, because when you show up, people are there early and they're talking with each other, and generally they look like they're having a good time. And then when the service is over, everyone doesn't bolt like a lightning strike to get out of there before the final song is done. Everyone's like vacated and already in line at Moe's. I'm like, no, this is not what I'm talking about. I'm like, people should linger because they don't want to leave. And they don't want to leave because this place is more alive than any other place. that this is home.
Yeah.
The church should feel more like like I think you said it earlier today, a homecoming or something like
family
that.
reunion is
Family
what church should
reunion,
feel
there
like.
you go.
Yeah. We talked about on the Jeep this morning or at dinner last night, I can't remember, the different missiological strategy that we've seen kind of morph that we've talked about. It used to be kind of go out into the culture.
Yeah,
and now it's like,
I'm
you want to
studying
unpack
a
that
bit,
right now?
and I'm just thinking about it. There's some writing on it.
Is it ready to go public yet? Or?
No, there's books written on it. I'm just reading and thinking. So it used to be most of the church's history was missionary. Like engage the culture, engage politics, engage the media, change the culture, change the, so now it'd be like save America. And then there's a smaller percentage in history that wasn't missionary, is monastery. And it was, the world is so gone. The culture is so gone that we need to create a place that is a countercultural kingdom subculture. And here we live, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Nobody else is doing that. So where do we send our kids to school? And who are our friends? And where do we hang out? And who are our people? And then making the church that subculture place, not closed, open. Everybody's welcome to come in, but come into a different culture, a different environment. Because right now, if you are, let's say you're hypothetically a heterosexual Bible-believing male,
Ew,
most of the
terrible,
place, I know.
Terrible.
I know.
How dare you?
Apologize
How
for
dare you?
triggering you, John. This should be a safe space. And but then most of the places you go, I feel like I'm on enemy territory, especially during the month of June.
Mm-hmm.
Like everywhere I go, it is yelling against what I believe, and it's trying to sell ideas and products to my children that contradict everything. Like it's like you can't go to Disneyland. You got to meet the male princess at the beginning of a whole new word. Fairy takes on a whole new meaning, and then you go to Target, and you're like, what?
Nope, don't go to Target. I'm boycotting about 15 companies now. It's hard to keep track of them.
It really is. Yeah. Well, and it's like, well, where do I go that they're not trying to shove a worldview down my throat and evangelize my children and take my money to fund my enemy? When you go to church, it should be, okay, these are my people. This is our place. And so when the church is like, well, we need to make sure everybody's welcome. Why? I mean, why? Like if you hate God, you should feel awkward with God's people.
Yeah.
If you're a dude in a dress and you go to a men's ministry, you should feel awkward.
Yeah.
You should.
No, it's crazy. It's just like things I've said in the past that I thought were good at the time that I don't know if it works anymore. Things like
we're a church for everyone.
Yeah.
Nah, everyone who wants to repent.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. That's good.
Yeah, if you want to come in and do drag queen story hour at Sunday school.
No,
we're not going to pray about it.
Not
go ask the Methodist about it.
Yeah. It is wild. Okay, we have to literally have to go. So this will be fun. I'm gonna ask him to talk about something. It'll be fun to watch what happens.
Oh boy,
and then I'm gonna give you the last word on all things manhood, masculinity, anything you want to say, no off limits topic. What does it mean to be a man, faithful man today? And then we seriously got to run. John, tell us in an unadulterated, safe place to say whatever you want. Tell us how you really feel about public schools. And what someone should do if they have kids in public schools.
No, public schools are fine as long as you love Karl Marx and hate your children. They're great. Super great. No, public schools are terrible. Terrible now. The public school that I went to as a kid is a distant, ancient relic of the past. It doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. It's not public school. Get rid of that word from your vocabulary.
It's government school.
It is a government school.
That's right.
The state is raising your kids. And a lot of us don't even realize that our kids push off early in the morning. They're gone all day. Then you got extracurricular activities, and then they got homework. You're not actually around your kids. Then you got sports on the weekend. You're not raising your kids. The government is. And you're going to be absolutely shocked one day at 19 when your kids have no idea what bathroom to use, despise all your values, think that you're an absolute moron, and walk away from all the values that you raised them with. And you'll scratch your head and be like, how did this happen? I'll say, well, they didn't reject the values that they were raised with. You didn't raise your kids. You didn't raise them with values at all. The state raised your kids. And man, there's such a better alternative. And I think you need to get your kids out of government schools right now. It doesn't matter what the cost is. Go into debt if you must. Go single income. Move into a tiny apartment and live like a pauper if you must. And that's like, that sounds outrageous. Of like, yeah, you don't live like you're a little king. I've lived overseas as a broke missionary, and I've been very, very broke in my life. And guess what? Some of the years where I was absolutely destitute were really happy years. They're really great. You don't need to keep up with the Joneses. Let the Joneses win and you rescue your kids, because what's happening right now is for the soul of your children, and you need to get your children back right now. Start raising. You will never regret raising your own children and actually being present for the most important parts of their lives. Go ahead and take them back. Private school if you must, but vet the private school, because chances are the private school is really just a public school curriculum, adding a chapel service, and maybe a code of conduct. But homeschool, it's easier than you could possibly imagine. It is more fun and full than you could imagine. All of whatever objections you have, I bet there's really good answers to those objections that are far more palatable. And today, in 2023, there are so many resources for homeschooling that you don't have to go at it alone. Whatever your questions are, there's whole co-ops and curriculums. And I just went to a homeschool convention I was speaking at, and there's like 10,000 people all wanting to figure out how to do homeschool better. And like all these booths of people, peddling all kinds of books. And it was amazing how many resources there are. Get your kids out of public schools immediately. Whatever the cost, do it now. That's all I have to say about
Was that it?
That's it.
I thought it was going to actually have an opinion on it.
Nope.
You're a little gray on the issue. Washington State, no school choice for those of us who don't live who live in the great state of the.
So Arizona we passed school full choice. Parents designate where like $7,000 goes.
That's so sweet that the government would let you choose how you educate and raise your kids. That is so kind.
Yeah.
Of our benevolent rulers.
Yeah. So like it is weird because the government is not pro-choice in killing the child. They are pro-choice in killing the child, but they're not pro-choice in educating the child.
Yeah.
So they're like, you could choose whether or not the kid lives or dies, but you can't choose who educates them. So it's like, if we don't get them in the womb, we're going to get them in the classroom.
Yeah.
And so in Arizona, it's like $7,000. You could put it toward a private school, a Christian school,
homeschool
curriculum.
Like you got friends in your church. They got 4 kids. They get $28,000 a month or a year to educate their kids however they want.
Exactly.
Road trips, curriculum.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It is nuts. And so this is why I think you are starting to see certain people move, and they're like, I just want to be in a place where I don't expect the government to be for me, but I don't expect everything to be against me. Mm-hmm. I mean, America's lost any sense of libertarianism. Yeah. It's all or nothing. And so, but for our families at our church, it's incredible. And so let's say you got 4 kids and they've got 4 kids and they got 4 kids, and you decide to do a co-op. Well, now you're a 6-figure co-op.
That's a big deal.
And you get to do trips and technology and curriculum. Yeah. And
it's a great example or experience of a government supporting the family as opposed to working against it. Because the existential crisis that we're facing in Washington State is I'm spending $16,000 in property taxes a year funding a mechanism that's weaponizing children to hate my values. Like I'm having like personal moral crisis in like paying my taxes. Because it's not just by osmosis. It's an intentional. It's stated. It's articulated.
You're supposed to protect the country from invaders, foreign and domestic. And when government forces are the domestic invaders of religious liberties, families, and churches. I mean, we saw that during COVID. I mean, your state said, pot dispensaries, abortion clinics are essential, and churches are not.
Can't meet, can't sing.
Can't sing. Yeah, but when a strip club is open and a church is closed, we are not talking about public safety. We're talking about we're talking about complete and total overtaking of liberty.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. What are you going to say?
Nope.
We got to go. No time.
Nope. I'm good.
Anyways, last word on manhood, masculinity. Give it to you. Pastor Mark can wrap us up. What does it take to be a man today?
Just be like Jesus.
Well said.
Top that, Mark.
Just the thing that comes to mind is your impact on the world is far less than you think. And your impact on your children is far greater than you think.
Well, that's pretty good.
Men, I love you. Thank you for being godly
thanks, guys.
men.
Thank you.
Thanks for being awesome husbands, and thank you for being awesome dads. I've been around your boys a lot. They're good boys. They're
Thanks, man.
respectful.
Thank
They're
you.
fun. They're creative. They love to be boys. They're energetic. You can tell they're well loved, and so well done. And your 5 kids are some of our closest friends.
Yeah, we love you guys.
You've done a good job. You got grandkids on the way. Congratulations, Grandpa. Love both you, man. Thanks for being
Thanks,
good
Brian.
husbands, good dads,
Thank you.
faithful men of Jesus.